And let's continue on then with the actual building part, right? So what I said here was we are going to try to override whatever's happening here with our new B-reps. So I'll go back to the beginning here. Under params, and right here it's this one that's called B-rep. We can populate that, just like we did with the file path. We can populate that with geometry. So you right-click it, and you say, in this case, we're going to set multiple B-reps. And we're going to select all of those. Okay. Just another thing I want to point out to those of you guys who might not be as experienced with Rhino. If you find yourself in a position like this where you can zoom out and you try to zoom in but it won't let you zoom in anymore, you have to recalibrate the workspace. So you can do that by selecting an object that you want to focus on and recalibrate it by typing in ZS, which is short for zoom select. So you type in ZS and now your camera revolves around that object, and you can zoom out and in a little more freely. Okay, so that's just a little tip I threw out there for you guys. So, guys, chatter. So, I don't want to institute a rule like this, but it might happen. I might ask you guys not to talk at all during these videos. I'm okay with you whispering to your neighbor to ask a brief, very brief question. Otherwise, these videos aren't that long that you can't just wait until we split it and ask me a question or something like that, or ask your neighbor a question, okay? Thanks. All right, B-rep. So we referenced all these B-reps in, and so theoretically we should be able to just replace all these connections with the new ones. So if Here's another pro tip, okay? I almost made what could have been a mistake where I start cross-referencing information by disconnecting only one of the old B-rep connections. What I'm trying to get in the practice of doing is actually disconnecting things first. If I'm trying to override something like this and put in like a new set where there are multiple inputs. So I'm going to disconnect both of these. The downside of that is that you have to remember where they go. So wires requires B-rep. So I'll put my new one in wires. Looks like it's doing it properly there. And preview. So now theoretically I could turn my layers off. And there is the Grasshopper version of what I referenced. Okay, I don't know what that's going to get us, but it's kind of cool. I don't know the definition well enough to know how it actually functions. So, yes?
How did you get that photo?
This one right here? I just realized that I don't think this is on your definition if you downloaded it, correct? You do? Do you guys have this line in your definition?
Yeah.
That one came with it?
Oh, yeah, I have it.
Okay. All right. So, like we said before, right, on Tuesday, you can rescale this, right? Our objective is to get this to a position where we can just export it and show what's actually happening on site relative to our building. So for me, it's really as simple as changing the scale here, right? So we have the whole SunPath scale that we can scale down. If I go down to, say, 1, well, that's pretty small, and it's kind of there, but you can't really see it. So rather than this predefined full integer slider, I'm going to delete that one and replace it with a new slider that has a decimal. So I'm going to say 0 is less than 0.55 is less than 2. And I'll plug that into SunPath scale. So at this point, I need to think about how I want to show this diagram. The traditional way of showing the diagram is from the top view, and it looks like this. This is probably where you're going to see most references to it, and it's up to you to decide which one you want. But sometimes you'll see the sun path diagram shown like this, right? And I think you might actually see it sometimes from the side as well. I might have actually shown you guys a couple where it's sort of at an oblique angle like this when we did our course preview thing. There might have been one or two of these. Okay, so you need to think about which ones you want to show, because if I'm showing it sort of from the side and up like this, I might be able to get away with one that's quite a bit, remains quite a bit bigger than the building itself. If I'm showing it from the top, I need to be careful about it, and I also probably would want to reposition the building, right? Because if the building's kind of off to the corner like this, I can't really tell what impact it's going to have. Yeah. So my suggestion for this exercise is to actually look at it from an oblique angle. Well, no, Iggy's probably going to want you to see it from the top. So we'll put it to the top. Another thing I realized is that I want to move my building so that it's more centralized. So before I go any further, I'm going to turn my layers back on and just drag my model back so that it sits centered on the origin. And last but not least, if you want to show a particular point in the year, then I would suggest changing your hour, day, and month to show a certain time of year. If you do not want to show a particular time of year, my thought is you would just turn the information off. So there might be, no, I don't know if there's an on-off. You might just have to turn the hour to be something that's like midnight. So I'll just do that real quick. I'm going to say not 0, 1. So if I just put a panel in for 1 and I plug that into hour, well, there's no sun at 1 in the morning, so that's fine. And this is going to tell me nighttime. Yeah, it still runs, right? So if I select this, even though it's orange and it gives me an error, it still runs. It just tells me that it's an error because this is a sun path diagram and you set it to a time that has no sun, so it's weird. Okay, so at this stage, what questions do you have? Yes?
For the sun path scale, what did you set that to? Slider?
Yeah, it's a slider from 0 to 2, and as long as it just needs to have decimals.
So 0 less than 2.
I did less than 0.55, less than 2. 0 less than 0.55, less than 2. The reason I did the less than 0.55 is so that it automates the fact that it has decimals. Okay. Yes? Question? Okay. All right. So, again, we're keeping this export process for this week very, very simple. So we're not actually doing anything with this sun path diagram. We're just going to do the export process with it as a bare diagram, right? It doesn't really have any analysis. It doesn't go any further than just showing us the location itself. So, what we do at this stage is to select the sun path, and you can bake it right here. So it's kind of the same process that we did before. You just right click and bake, and it's probably going to give me some silly layer or something again. Maybe not. It didn't bake.
So do you have to put the 1?
You shouldn't have to. I'm hoping it'll bake. let me try it in the center here. Fake. Yours did. There it goes. All right. I don't know why mine didn't just a second ago. So you select it, right click, go to bake, and what you'll get is this. Whoops, I moved my model as well. Just be careful that you don't accidentally select your model as well. So, actually, you probably do want your model selected. So something to note here, guys, is even though we baked it in 3D.
Oh, we making 3D too?
Yeah, it bakes in 3D. Yeah, you can do some cool things with that. But if you're trying to process it into something that you can export, you're better off after you've baked it, after you've baked it, do a make 2D. Is make 2D new to anyone?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, so make 2D then. If you hit enter, and I know there are probably a few questions popping up at this stage, but I'll come around in a second. But I want to finish the thought. Make 2D. After you've baked out a 3D graph, you just hit enter, and most of these settings are not going to be relevant to us right now. If it's set to default just at current view and object, that's okay. Don't worry about maintain source layers. It's okay this way or that way, it doesn't matter. And it creates a second version of our diagram, but this one is flat. And now at that point, it becomes very, very simple. All you have to do is select it, say File, Export Selected, and it becomes the same export process. You can use Illustrator, you can use AutoCAD.
Which is the best one to use?
That's a good question.
Okay. That's straight. Is what an AutoCAD pixelated or?
I typically do DWGs. The reason I do DWGs is because you can take your line work into AutoCAD first to clean it up if you're doing something complex, and that's not easily done in Illustrator. So that's probably the reason why most of you who don't like Illustrator don't like it, right? Because it sucks to fix up like your little corners and stuff that are connecting funny. Do that in AutoCAD first. But AutoCAD does not do the graphics very well. So after you're done cleaning up the line work, bring it into Illustrator, do your fills and shades and stuff like that right there. That's how I do it.
And then when you open up your DWG and Illustrator, it should show up as a vector image, right? It wouldn't be all pixelated.
Yeah, it shows up as a vector. Yeah, good questions. So just to finish the thought here, guys, and close the book on this one, I'm going to call this one, save it in my personal drive here, some path, doesn't really matter. But I just want to show you how to get it into Illustrator. So in Illustrator, you've got one side, you're going to have 3 diagrams on a sheet, and then on the other one, all you have to do is place, and then navigate to the sun path and place it on. Well, that looks wonky. What?
It's not a circle.
What happened there?
Is it so? Did it change it to 2004 lines?
I don't. We'll figure it out. Anyway, so once you actually figure out how to make it still retain a circle, that's all you have to do. You drop it in, and then you start playing with like the line thicknesses and stuff. So yeah, I'll try that out, and I'll figure this out. Let me come around and troubleshoot with you guys, unless there are general questions before I do that. Okay.